What's up, Pyromaniac Nation? Today I'm gonna spend 24 hours in this abandoned house. Oh, no. Make sure to smash that subscribe button and keep watching. Hey, creepy YouTube cabal guy. I know you're around here somewhere.
What's up?
I feel gross.
About what?
I feel gross about this. This is completely different from my usual stuff.
Listen, from our studies, this is what the algorithm likes. We're trying to get you back in the good graces of the algorithm, right?
Right, fine. I'll stay in the old house. Got any games for me to play in the meantime?
I got BloodRayne 2 right here.
The last BloodRayne video did horribly.
Look, it's either this or get haunted by the ghost of the serial killer that died here 20 years ago.
What? You didn't tell me that.
Well, it was supposed to be for the dramatic reveal at the midpoint of the video, duh. Have you never seen the Mr. Beast video before?
Just shut up and give me the game so I can get this over with. Hey there, Pyromaniacs. Remember my first BloodRayne video? Of course you don't. Well, to bring you up to speed, BloodRayne was a game that spawned a short-lived attempt at a multimedia franchise in the early 2000s, all of which banked hard on the gothic action movie craze at the time. Blade, Underworld, Van Helsing, The Crow, stuff like that. The first game was developed by Terminal Reality under Majesco, and started its life as a spiritual sequel to a survival horror game called Nocturne, which had you play as a secret agent in the 1930s who teams up with a Dampier to fight monsters. Eventually, though, BloodRayne would be turned into a hack-and-slash action game where you play as a Dampier in the 1930s who teams up with a secret agency to fight monsters. I mean, at least they didn't stray too far from their comfort zone. Despite the game's jank, BloodRayne garnered enough success to warrant a sequel. The subject of this video, and the reason you clicked in the first place, BloodRayne 2. This game is set in the present day of 2004, 66 years after the events of the first one. After Rayne supposedly succeeded in killing her father Kagan, she's made it her goal to hunt down the rest of his children as well. As it turns out, her half-siblings have banded together to form a vampiric cult in the name of their father. And the Brimstone Society has tasked Rayne and a human agent named Severin to stop the cult's plot to blot out the sun, with a supernatural blood shroud that would allow vampires and demons to walk freely during the day. I just want to say right off the bat just how much stronger the writing is in this game compared to BloodRayne 1. All the dialogue in the first game felt kinda dry. Not to mention outside of Jurgen, I can't even really bring myself to remember any of the other villains from that game. Unless you want to count Mintz, none of them were really all that memorable. In this game though, all of Kagan's children are instantly memorable. Just to name a few, you have the conniving and sociopathic Ephemera, who seems to desperately want to be the head honcho in charge of everything and will do anything to get that power. Then you have the mysterious and animalistic Kestrels who taunt Rayne throughout the game and speak in broken English. And then you have the dapper aristocrat Zarensky. Despite the fact that Zarensky is the first of Kagan's children you encounter, the game still takes the time to flesh him out and make him feel like a full character. Even Rayne herself is just far more likable this time around. You can tell that Laura Bailey at this point had gotten a better feel for the character. In the first game, Rayne was just your typical one-liner spouting action game protagonist with a femme fatale coat of paint. But here, she has a few more layers to her. She's sarcastic, sadistic, headstrong, and always radiates confidence in all situations. Her banter with Severin throughout the game is very endearing. The two characters play off each other really well, and you get the feeling that this isn't the first time they've been partnered up together, and are at least somewhat used to each other's quirks at this point. I genuinely find Rayne to be an extremely charming protagonist in this game. Even more than last time, she's way more than just the sexy red-haired vampire lady. She really feels like a fully fleshed out character now. Speaking of flesh, let's finally get around to talking about the gameplay, which has been massively improved in pretty much every way. First off, the basic melee combat mechanics got a complete overhaul, with the ability to actually lock onto enemies this time around. The enemy variety is far wider too, with every enemy type having to be dealt with differently. May it be disarming enemies, grappling and throwing chop suey bombers, or even the occasional mini-boss. The game does a decent job at keeping enemy encounters fresh, most of the time. There are still encounters that can get a little stale after a while. The climb up the tower to fight Feral comes to mind. Dear God, how tall is this freaking tower? The weapon system in the first game has been replaced with something that I personally think is far more thematically appropriate: the Carpathian Dragons. Magical vampiric guns that use blood for ammo. The The guns each have a reservoir for their own supply of blood, but once they're out of juice, each shot will drain some of Rayne's health. This adds an extra level to combat, as it means that not only can enemies be drained for health like in the first game, they can also be used to restock on ammunition. As you go through the game, you unlock more modes for the dragons, which basically act as different weapons. You have the base single-shot pistols, a submachine gun, a rocket launcher, a shotgun, the gang's all here. The gunplay is also completely different this time around. Rather than the janky auto-lock system of the original, this game uses the same lock-on system as the melee attacks, which definitely helps make for a more seamless combat experience. The harpoon makes a return from the first game, although with a very different use case. Instead of being used to pull enemies in from a distance to feed, it's now used as a way to throw enemies around like the worthless sacks of blood that they are. The harpoon is also used to complete certain objectives in the levels, like throwing enemies into electrical panels to open doors, or throwing bombers into pistons to destroy a machine. The problem is that throwing enemies isn't always the most accurate, and it's most likely going to take a ton of trial and error to get it right, which sucks for some of these more time-sensitive objectives, where you have to do something like electrocute multiple enemies at once. Vampire powers also make a return from the first game. Same as last time, you have Blood Rage, which increases your speed and attack power, Dilated Perception, which slows down time and acts as a sort of bullet time, and Aura Vision, which lets you sense enemies and check for interactable objects. Now though, as you progress through the game, you unlock more and more powerful versions of these powers. Blood Rage gets a buffed version called Blood Fury that's just the same thing but better, but eventually you unlock a blood vortex that shreds everything in the room. Aura Vision gains the ability to project your aura onto enemies to either feed on or possess them, and Dilated Perception turns from bullet time into straight up chaos control with the ability to freeze time completely. All in all, BloodRayne 2 did exactly what a sequel was supposed to do. It improved on its predecessor in pretty much every conceivable way, and really proved that this series had real franchise potential. I couldn't find any solid sales numbers for the game, but it seemed to be a modest success from what I can tell. So that begs the question, why didn't Majesco ever greenlight a BloodRayne 3? With the way this game ends, they were definitely setting up a third installment, so what gives?
Because I'm all out of money!
Yeah, Majesco was never particularly the most profitable game publisher. Most of their output over the years have been licensed titles, with BloodRayne very much being an outlier for the company. A year after BloodRayne 2, Majesco took a big risk on another attempt at a multimedia franchise in the form of Glyphx's Advent Rising. The game featured a story from acclaimed science fiction writer Orson Scott Card of Ender's Game fame, and, similar to Card's own reputation over the years, went up in flames upon release. Majesco and Glyphx were banking on Advent Rising becoming the next Star Wars, with trailers for the game even showing in front of Revenge of the Sith in select theaters. The amount of money they spent on marketing the game made it impossible for them to turn a profit after all was said and done, and Majesco never really financially recovered since. Eventually, Majesco was bought out by a biotech company of all things back in 2016, and the company has continued to just trade hands between other much larger companies ever since. As for BloodRayne, at some point there was a plan for a direct sequel on PSP, but it was cancelled early on because of, what else? Money. It wasn't until WayForward pitched a more frugal 2D side-scroller spin-off that Majesco finally let Rayne back out of the coffin, if only for a short while. But ever since then, it's been radio silent. Luckily, there is still some hope that we might see something BloodRayne related soon, as, thankfully, Majesco no longer owns the license. BloodRayne was purchased by Ziggurat Interactive a while back, who proceeded to release remastered versions of all three games on modern hardware. Ziggurat is still a pretty young company, and because of that, their future intentions for buying up a bunch of old and obscure game licenses are pretty vague. But one can hope that they plan to do something with these games. There's really no telling what lies ahead for this series, if anything at all. But I'd like to believe that we'll see the day when the shroud is lifted and Rayne gets to see the sun once more. Hey, creepy hooded guy, are we done now?
Boo.
Bobby Kotick? Wait, you're a ghost?
You're not surprised that I'm a serial killer?
No, that part sounds about right.
Well, are you at least curious about how I died?
I mean, maybe a little?
It all started when Microsoft bought Activision from me. I was so distraught, so I took a ride on one of my mini yachts to take my mind off of it. That was when suddenly...
Never mind, I kinda don't care. See ya.
Huh, you left the house and lost the challenge.
When were you gonna tell me that Bobby Kotick is the serial killer?
Bobby Kotick's a serial killer?
You didn't know?
I thought I made it up. Again, have you ever seen a Mr. Beast video?
Holy crap, do you know what this means?
Happy Halloween!
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, leave a like and become a pyromaniac yourself by subscribing. Until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.